kindly.
Now, okay.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that we know for a fact that the actual time of departure, Alpha Tango Delta, was 0912 hours.
That's correct.
14 minutes into the flight, which many Ghanaians wouldn't know, the plane went off radar. But let me quickly state that when a plane is off radar, it does not mean that the plane has crashed. It simply means that based on its location and the surrounding terrain, and maybe weather, the radar covering the area cannot pick the location of the plane. That's all that it means. But 14 minutes into the flight, it went off radar. If the plane was expected to arrive at Obuasi after 50 minutes flight at about 10:02 hours, at 10:02 hours, the plane was not there. So per standard protocol, an alert was made. And I'm aware personally that the Ghana Air Force called Kumasi, and when I say Kumasi, I mean the Central Command, to say that there is a plane. Of course, the Central Command knew because some of the elements in Kumasi were already in Obuasi, where they also have an FOB. Have you seen the flight? That was 30 minutes later. Per protocol, after 1 hour, if the plane is still not found, I mean its location, then the distress call is made. That's the protocol. So every substantive action to find the plane technically started after 1100 hours. Now, what did Central Command do? The FOB at Obuasi was told that you are expecting the plane at Long Clay Stadium, Sports Stadium. So if the plane is not there, can you go to the Ashanti Gold airfield and see whether the plane is there? That was the function the FOB played. Then 4BN was directed now to deploy a search team. Now remember, the soldiers are not sitting down in barracks, sleeping. So you need to find them, quickly mobilize them, find the transport, and then start moving from the location of Central Command 4BN Afari area there towards Sikamai. It's not 5 minutes distance. To cut it short, the team led by the commanding officer of 4BN got to the crash site at 1400 hours, 2 p.m. The regional minister got to the crash site at 1500 hours, 3 p.m. Now remember, from the start, I had estimated that the plane crashed about 0953, 0955. By 10 o'clock or 1000 hours, the plane had crashed. When it crashed, the farmer or farmers who were in the forest, plus some civilians in the village who had seen, as you had just shown, were moving to the area. So the locals had a lead time of 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, which is 4 hours. It is not correct for anybody to say that the military did not get there and allow the civilians. The civilians were already there. Either they were on the mountain or they were in the village, Sikamai, and were moving there. Nobody could have prevented that. It is out of curiosity, out of our indiscipline, out of lack of knowledge and so on, that when they got there, they started, removing critical exhibits from there. Now let me take another angle. Remember on another news file Saturday, I had said that a second helicopter should have been deployed, or a second aircraft. At the time, I didn't know. But Ghana Air Force has an Mi-17 Russian, bigger than the Z9. That was based in Tamale for Boko crisis duties. Oh. It was task ordered to move from Tamale to Kumasi, which it did. By the time it should have taken off for an aerial reconnaissance or aerial search and rescue, it was already clear in the media that the crash site had been found. So that plane did not stay there. At about the same time, General Headquarters or High Command ordered the CASA 125, which is a transport plane, to move from Accra to Kumasi. When it did, it moved with the preliminary investigation team. That was the plane that we saw back in Accra with the coffins. Anyway, when the 4BN team, went to Sikaman, they went with 2 ambulances. And there was another ambulance that came probably with the regional minister who also came with the fire service and so on. I think the police came with another ambulance. So there were 3 ambulances. Those ambulances had body bags, at least the one from the military or whatever it is. So those were the ambulances that were used. And I want to explain that ambulances should not take dead bodies, but under certain circumstances, they can convey dead bodies. After that, the ambulances need to be sanitized, fumigated, and so on. So there was nothing wrong with that. They took the bodies to the Prempeh the First International Airport, Kumasi. It was there that the bodies were transferred from the sacks that we saw into body bags. Then the plane and put on the CASA 125, which took off. Now, all the preparations that we saw at Accra, coffins draped with Ghana flag, happened in flight. See, the coffins were not prepared on the ground. In fact, the coffins had been ordered at the instructions of the CDS from Accra, not from Kumasi. The picture one gets is that if you piece the timings together, circumstances did not prevent anybody from being at the crash site in 30 minutes, in 1 hour, and whatever. Per protocol, all actions substantive started at or from about 1100 hours. And then it took another, let's say, 3 hours for the troops to be there. Anybody will tell you, even the regional minister moving from Obuasi took about 2 hours. And then another 1 hour through the bush path to get to the site. In a way, the presence of the locals helped us to be able to identify the crash site. Let Ghanaians remember that at Atiwa, it took 3 good days before we knew where the crash site was. So the local community were a blessing. They played a positive role, including joining with the military or the recovery team to recover the bodies or body parts from the slope where the plane had, crashed. But on the other hand, they also played negative roles because the protocol is that no exhibit must be tampered with. They must lie where they are. Because the investigation team, during the forensic analysis, will be able to build a picture as to how the plane crashed and how its parts were strewn, including the bodies, were strewn here or there. Finally, let me say that in that general area, and I think we all saw the hills, in that Obuasi general area, the highest peak is 1,250. Accra is 200 feet above mean sea level. Obuasi is 1,250. The crash site or impact site is 725 feet above mean sea level. So this high ground, we know also that the accounts say a bo esi. And we know what the boy is. It's fog. So the plane was not flying in daylight. But what GMED had told us that July and August were going to be this or that, misty, rain, storm, whatever it is. That was the kind of condition that it was flying through. We know now that there were 2 other helicopter flights moving in the southern part, which all emergency landed. One aborted, the other one continued. We know that even yesterday, a Volta River Authority helicopter It happens to be also a Z9, but the original one based on the French Dauphin model. What crashed from the Ghana Air Force was the Chinese, if you like, Chinese model. So the conditions have not been very helpful, naturally. I think any one of us who wants to speak must speak based on the context of what it is that the situation actually was. But if we are not very careful, for instance, it is good that the regional minister was there as head of the RegSec. But the regional minister and the RegSec are not the search and rescue team, and they are not investigation bodies. They don't take operational and tactical decisions. They take political decisions. So even if they are there, even if the CDS himself was a Sikaman, it was not in his place to be interfering with the work that the team leader, in this case, the commanding officer of 4BN, was doing with the search and rescue team. We need to understand that. There was no need to hurriedly remove the bodies and any part from the crash site. And under the circumstance for somebody to say that, let's use cocoa sacks. There was absolutely no need. The bodies should be there for the investigation team to come at minimum, peg their locations, do the photographs, and then recover the bodies. Lastly, Moro, it is not true that the bodies would have melted the the body bags or the cadaver, pouches and so. It's not true. It's not correct. They are heat resistant. You see, and let's recall that the crash happened at 1000 hours latest. Now we're saying that by 1400 hours, 1600 hours, and we know that the bodies were being made late in the evening, that the bodies were still smoldering and couldn't. If that was the case, and I maintain, because I'm also from the village, if the body heat could melt the body pouches, they could also burn the cocoa sacks. By the way, they were carried by human beings who were not burnt.
Okay.
So we must not have any excuses as to why bodies had to be put. Look, the protocol is that one is dignity. One is securing the bodies and their fluids in order to preserve the evidence. And then 3, to also stop contamination, for those who are carrying the bodies away. In a way, there were lapses. But it is not as if, nobody played their role. The Air Force didn't play its role. The Armed Forces didn't play their role. National Security didn't play any role. Police didn't play any role. Now let me say that we know the use of cocoa roads. Because when we saw, indeed I'm told, that the National Fire Service tender actually slipped off the road that we saw it moving on, and probably has still not been recovered or has been recovered later. You see, so these are some of the contextual, facts, which unfortunately for the armed forces, which are always silent, cannot come out and tell everybody. But indeed, that is even a bit of a breach, because we need constant updates. And it's not too late for the armed forces to catalog all the events from 0912 till today. What they did, what we have found, what we have not found, what remains to be done. It helps to carry Ghanaians along, rather than this palpable silence, that as usual, we are faced with. But I thank you for the opportunity.
And I also want to thank you very much. In fact, we want to thank you very much for this very, very important and useful insights, as far as this conversation is concerned.